Hey folks, welcome to Munich and a run through of Nice Cognigy Nexus 2026. So this is the first time I am attending a Nexus event. Had started partnering with Cognigy in about February last year, and there was a Nexus 2020, and there was a Nexus 2025 event in Dusseldorf, but having only just started partnering, I felt probably was a little bit too soon to go. I now regret that because it'd been really interesting to see that from the pre-acquisition state to where Cognigy are with Nice. And today has been a day of celebration, I would say. There's been lots of applause, lots of whooping in the main hall. Really impressive facility here just on the outskirts of Munich. About 1,000 people in attendance. And it's been just a really interesting day of hearing customer insights and really open customer insights as well with how to deploy this, but also a nod to the future and where Cognigy sits within the wider Nice world. So we were kicked off by Philip, former CEO of Cognigy, now the CAIO at Nice, and he talked about what a time it is to be alive, talking about applied AI and how the journey keeps evolving. So we've gone from websites to apps and now to AI agents in the future, and what happens when your customers become AI agents instead of humans instead. So we're looking at the age of autonomous agents. He talked a great deal about expanding the scope of CX. It's no longer just about customer service, for example, and the agentic ecosystem as well, and talked about how with the Nice platform, we're essentially looking at the unified CX AI platform and approach there. One thing that was really interesting was talk about how this wasn't just an acquisition to make use of Cognigy's conversational and agentic capabilities. Already we're seeing Cognigy being deployed across the whole of the Nice portfolio. And that brought Scott Russell, Nice CEO, to the stage and talked about his first thoughts of when to acquire Cognigy and realizing when he came on board there was a clear gap. And from reviewing, he said 50 different options. Cognigy was the only choice that had both enterprise credibility and the vision. And the question essentially was, will Nice embrace the vision? And was Cognigy still hungry? What was interesting watching Scott and Philip on stage was just a natural partnership between the two, and a natural camaraderie and vision between the two as well. So the idea seems to be moving forward to unify the platform and make it easier to roll out and to iterate. And I think what's interesting there is the product roadmap is ahead of time. The desire is to deliver agentic CX as fast as possible and to leverage the strengths. So Scott talked about don't be in revenue protection mode, don't worry about seat licenses. This isn't a case of disruption of the platform, this is pivoting, and this is using those advantages now. What's interesting here is this feels like Nice's most significant acquisition for a long time. So I started working with CXone back in 2019 during my RingCentral days, and Nice has historically acquired a lot of companies. inContact was one which brought CXone into the core of the offering with Nice. This feels even more significant in that Cognigy is going to be the beating heart of the Nice empire moving forward. It is part of everything essentially moving forward. We're already seeing it with some of the CXone product updates, and I'll get to the product keynote later on in this as well. But essentially the message from leadership was embrace the change. And I think this is really exciting in that, the concern, having seen some of the previous acquisitions, was it will just become, say, Playvox, a Nice company, and we would never see those features come into CXone, or Contact Engine, which was essentially on the periphery for Nice for a number of years since acquisition, and actually now has found a home within the Cognigy business unit, and now appears to actually have a very solid grounding to work alongside the Cognigy side of things, which makes things really, really interesting. There was talk about the ability to deliver and how Cognigy in itself has grown, I think, 3 to 4 times, quadrupled the number of resources since acquisition as well. So the acquisition has allowed Cognigy to get better. We then started with customer showcases, and our first, as part of a keynote session, was Jack Roberts from Fabletics, and he was really open and engaging, talking about the various different things that were important to Fabletics as part of evolving their customer experience in line with expectations in the market. And the why, if they don't, someone else will. I also then started keeping a note of the various different trainers on the stage. So Scott had a mint pair of Nikes, as did Philip, and Jack had a lovely pair of green Adidas. And as these are the footwear choice of Holt CX at the moment, I was pretty satisfied with the attempts by the team there. A little bit of nonsense there, but always interested to see how people present themselves on stage. So Jack talked about looking at agentic agents with specific roles, guardrails throughout. They previously had deterministic, and they needed to move away from 10 years of IVR and bot building, essentially. And what's been really interesting, and Jack was the first to mention this, but it has been said throughout the day, was aggressive use cases. Take the high risk approach. Don't just do password resets because they're easy. People don't really care for them. So he was looking for business positive actions and using insights in amongst all of that. They put it into their retention workflow, and their deterministic bot was achieving 3% save performance. And now it looks like that is about 5 to 6 times higher from that. And even looking at a complete paradigm shift in terms of the various different metrics and measurements they were using in the contact center. So the big thing that he talked about as well, especially when there's been a lot of hype about contact center agents disappearing, but essentially he said we don't want to automate everything. We don't want 100%. What we want to do, though, is make sure that our humans can be the best they can be and build for them as well. So he talked a lot about engaging your stakeholders both up and down to the agent level as well. So communicating regularly the why to the agent community. And essentially, one of the phrases he used was honest conversations and don't bullshit them. So really engaging keynote from Jack. We then took a little break, and the hall here at the Infinity in Munich, really nicely set up. So the main hall is huge, and so the main hall is huge. And then up from that, you've got kind of the main plaza where you've got plenty of areas to go and network, to eat, to go and reflect. The tech area, if you've been to a nice event, you're used to seeing the booths, the various different people demoing there. There's about 10 different things being demonstrated there that you can go and understand a bit more at. And there are tech labs going on in conjunction with the main talks as well. After a short break, we had Lufthansa, and we had Edgar and Rosemarie, and they were talking about the various different client types and how they have a very long customer journey. The irony here is that Lufthansa, some of their staff are on strike at the same time as this conference is taking place. So they were talking about how other airlines are not necessarily able to cope as easily with that kind of stress versus what they've done. They have 3 different products using Cognigy, 15 million conversations in 2025. Their chat assistant has basically evolved over the course of 9 years. It was deterministic. It had 150 flows, 500 intents, and they have moved that across alongside checking out all of their various different gaps in terms of knowledge, in terms of guidance, visibility, and context. And they have moved all of that into agentic flows with Cognigy. We then had Generali Insurance with Christian and Kaylee, and they talked all about essentially their customers still like to call. And while some can be transactional, there are more complex, more emotional conversations. And essentially it's please understand my need, please resolve my problem, and please don't make me have to call again to discuss it. 50 million calls inbound per year. So they had low maturity, diverse use cases across the or ways of doing things across their business, and no group standards. So they brought in a program across the group, and they iterated and discovered at scale to really understand what was going on in their business and have rolled this out. Some examples of success here. They talked about their various different models and 5 weeks to essentially validate agentic AI. Again, really aggressive, but they looked at customer ID rising from 47 to 81%, intent clarification from 57 to 94%, in fact, at near 100% for some cases as well. And all of that was using Microsoft Azure as the STT and TTS within the platform. The big thing they talked about was having a good AI governance framework. So if you're thinking about deploying this technology, and by rights you should be, then make sure that your organization is looking at how you do this well. So they have their framework, make sure that every AI app is checked and reviewed before it goes into live. We then had a pivot to BT OpenReach. This is historically, I know this as a contact engine case study because that's where in the house it's come from. Proactive AI agent, as it's now known, and it's been a real success story ever since the contact engine team came into the Nice world a few years back. 1 million proactive outbound conversations per month. And talking about, the cost to the business of this is essentially 10 million plus pounds, UK pounds of annual benefit and there's cost reductions in terms of operational, there's revenue retention, there's additional business, there's new revenue, and also they haven't got really annoyed engineers turning up to people's houses and the customer is not in. They are now pivoting to looking at how, with the proactive AI agent side of things, they can trigger agentic flows as part of that previously contact engine flow. That is really interesting, and it's heartening to see that acquisition from a few years ago now has a really interesting place in amongst the wider Nice portfolio. So what did we then have? We then had the main event of the afternoon, which was the product keynote from Sebastian and Tice, and talking again about the agentic lifestyle, which was alluded to in the keynotes at the start. So your create, your evaluate, your deploy, and your observe were the 4 different categories. They are bringing in AI everywhere amongst the platform. So AI to guide you through the setup of creating your agentic agents. I nearly called them bots for a moment there. So easier creation and onboarding, extremely good traceability, bringing knowledge in. So CXone Expert is becoming more and more relevant to the Cognigy suite now as well. And the use of CXone Knowledge Hub for Cognigy is really interesting. The simulator, the ability to create hundreds, if not thousands, of simulated conversations and then detailed analysis of that as well. And things such as Voice Connect, which is WebRTC. So WebRTC, click to call on websites, nascent channel. So it has been in the CXone suite since about 25.1 by Digital Experience. But this is really interesting in that Cognigy now supports it as well. And what they've also brought in are sub-agents. So say your bot got to a point, keep calling them bots, your agentic agent gets to a point where they can no longer help the customer. Previously, that would be an escalation to a human. However, there is now the ability to essentially send to a sub-agent by Spawn to go and ask a group of agents, say over chat, hey, I've got an answer to this question. Now, this is essentially taking what has been done in the CCaaS world and bringing it to assisting your agentic agents. So instead of just an agent being able to handle, or a human agent being able to handle one uplift, instead, they could potentially be answering questions from a multitude of agents. And the big thing here is self-learning as well in the future. Big strides in Copilot. It looks like we're seeing more of the Cognigy Copilot and the Nice Copilot coexisting within the same area. So you're going to see easier setup, especially around the tooling. That's been a big move. Obviously, there was last year, Nice talked about using Task Assist, which was Bot Builder. And then obviously Bot Builder has now been retired essentially as part of the Cognigy acquisition, and the Cognigy side is doing the Task Assist. That's going to get better and better. I did like, and I don't know if this was intentional, but there was a point within one of the product presentations where you could see Chuck Norris facts referenced to as a sub-agent. Now, for those of you that played and used Bot Builder, that was one of the skills you could get off the shelf. And I'm hoping that was just a lovely nod to a little bit of history in the portfolio that is no longer there. Tice talked about model context protocols and talking about essentially Cognigy becoming an MCP server, which allows the likes of ChatGPT and others to essentially call upon Cognigy directly. And this unlocks the machine channel, so that what if your next customer is an agentic agent, well, you don't have to worry about flooding your human agents with that. Talked a lot about conversational analysis, and this is where we actually talked about automation opportunities, which is relatively new on CXone. But if you're a CXone customer and you're using things such as actions, then this can be looking across your suite to say, right, these are your automation opportunities. And click here, it will go and build it within Cognigy, which is pretty cool. There is a video on the channel for automation opportunities, doesn't include the building bit just yet. We closed the day with a roundtable discussion. So there were 5 customers on stage and some key kind of phrases here. The message here was interesting because it reflected what Jack had said in the morning as well, which was start with the most complex thing. That will give you your greatest ROI. It will also turn those AI skeptics in your business into believers. And then those simple areas will be more simple anyway, because you'll have mastered the really complex. Might be painful, but it has the greatest worth to your business. There was also talk about essentially making sure that this is a business project rather than just an IT project as well. Don't be shy in proceeding. Don't keep things in POC forever. Go live at some point and iterate and improve and constantly evolve. There was one phrase which I loved towards the end of it, which was, you can't stick to the plan. Things will always evolve. The way in which the technologies evolve, the way in which your business will evolve, the way in which expectations of customers, everything is evolving. So don't get head up on, well, we bought this as a deterministic solution 6 months ago, so that's how we need to use it. The plan will always change, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. So they are some reflections on day one. Today has really been an area of reflection and celebration for the Cognigy team, and it's been really impressive. What's intriguing to me is, as a CXone person that comes from the realm of CXone over the years, seeing how Cognigy isn't just going to be a Cognigy powered by Nice standalone. Cognigy is here throughout the platform to make it better, and that makes things really interesting. So that's a summary on day one. Looking forward to day two. Probably be recording from a different hotel as I move around the city of Munich. But thank you very much for tuning in to A Piece of CX.